we can stand up for ourselves. It's Canada strong. We can stand up for ourselves. We've called out those comments. They're disrespectful. They're not helpful. And they need to stop before, and they will have to stop before we sit down and have a conversation about our broader partnership with the United States. But we're Canada. We don't need other people to come to our aid. Come on.
Canada's sassiest diplomat, a hilarious take on Trump's 51st state fantasy. Kirsten Hillman, Canada's ambassador, wasted no time shutting down President Trump's latest geopolitical daydream, turning Canada into the 51st U.S. state. In a Fox News interview, she firmly declared, "We take our independence seriously." Translation, nice try, but Canada is keeping its maple syrup and free healthcare. Trump's often comment has reignited age-old U.S. Canada debates, proving once again that the former president has a talent for stirring up unnecessary international drama. Hillman, embodying the spirit of every Canadian politely telling someone to back off, made it clear that Canada has no interest in being annexed. The White House has yet to clarify Trump's remarks. Perhaps they're still flipping through the Constitution to check if 51st state via tweet is a legitimate process. Hillman's response: a diplomatic thanks, but no thanks. Trump's 51st state idea received about as well as a cold plate of poutine. Canada's stance: sovereignty isn't up for grabs, not even for a real estate deal. Public reaction: equal parts laughter, concern, and questions about whether a former president can be impeached again. Trump's suggestion has thrown another log onto the fire of U.S.-Canada relations. Though, let's be honest, it's not like Canada was about to pack its bags and move in. Trade disputes, border issues, and the occasional war over who actually invented basketball have kept tensions simmering for decades. In a Fox News Sunday interview, Jackie Heinrich asked if newly appointed Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney's silence was due to Trump's comments. The reality? Carney is likely too busy figuring out how to explain to his citizens that no, they won't suddenly have to start using inches and Fahrenheit. While official statements focus on sovereignty behind closed doors, diplomats are probably exchanging very polite emails trying to de-escalate the situation. Trade talks, border security, and the eternal debate over who gets to claim Ryan Reynolds remain high on the agenda. Despite the tension, U.S. Canada economic and defense ties remain strong. Canada, ever the polite but firm neighbor, is sticking to its stance. We love you, but we're not moving in. As border policies continue to evolve, the world watches, half in anticipation, half in disbelief, as this latest episode of diplomatic headaches with Donald Trump unfolds. Unpacking Trump's 51st state comments. President Trump's U.S. 51st state proposal has caused a lot of debate since 2017. This part looks into the details of his Trump-Canada annexation comments. It also talks about what these comments mean and how people reacted. Trump's territorial comments timeline shows a pattern. Important moments include: in July 2017, he talked about merging Canadian provinces with U.S. states during a press conference. During the 2020 campaign rallies, he mentioned Canada as a possible 51st state several times. In 2023 interviews, he again showed support for North American integration in Fox News interviews. Things like NAFTA renegotiations and border security might influence these comments. Critics say he uses nationalist talk for political gain. Supporters believe it's part of talks on North American integration. U.S. media saw these comments as part of Trump's unique diplomacy. Canadian news focused on concerns about sovereignty. A poll showed 91% of Canadians don't want to join the U.S. According to Angus Reid, social media had everything from jokes to serious discussions. Kirsten Hillman, Canada's ambassador to the U.S., spoke about Trump's 51st state remarks on Fox News Sunday. She talked about Canada's commitment to being its own country. This shows Canada's strong will to keep its identity, even when talking to its neighbor. In the interview, Hillman talked about Trump's remarks. She said, over 91% of Canadians don't want to be part of the U.S. based on polls. She spoke calmly, showing Canada's pride without being too harsh. Experts say she used words like sovereignty and Canadian will to show Canada's strong beliefs. Her words match the diplomatic statement Canada made earlier this week. The main points are that she mentioned old polls showing Canadians want to stay independent, talked about what Canada and the U.S. can work on together, and said her job is to protect Canada's interests. Hillman used both media and official talks to respond. This is how diplomats usually handle tricky comments from others. Her way keeps to old diplomatic rules, but also talks about today's politics. If you're enjoying this breakdown, don't forget to like and subscribe for more in-depth analysis on global affairs. Your support helps us bring you the latest updates with sharp insight. Canada's national sovereignty is key to its identity. It has strong ties with the U.S. Ambassador Kirsten Hillman talked about this in an interview. She said that it was not a slight to the president or the American people, but an expression of Canada's own patriotism and sense of identity as a country. Her words show that defending Canadian autonomy is seen as celebrating who Canada is, not as a challenge. Canada has stood up for its boundaries in important times. In 1982, Canada patriated its constitution, ending British parliamentary authority. In 2001, new anti-terrorism laws asserted control over security policy. In 2017, NAFTA renegotiations helped protect agricultural trade autonomy. Now, Canada's independent nation policies aim for balance. Even though 85% of Canadian exports go to the U.S., Canada makes choices to stay unique. For example, Quebec's civil code and healthcare models show Canada's desire to keep its institutions different, even with shared interests. Canadians to U.S. annexation talk. Thanks, but no thanks. Recent surveys reveal that a whopping 91% of Canadians are firmly against any idea of merging with the United States. Apparently, free healthcare, gun control, and not having to deal with Florida are deal breakers. This overwhelming rejection isn't just a fun fact, it plays a crucial role in diplomatic talks between the two nations. We take seriously our sovereignty. Over 91% of Canadians reject U.S. merger discussions, stated Ambassador Kirsten Hillman in a Fox News interview, likely while resisting the urge to roll her eyes. A 2023 Angus Reid poll confirmed this sentiment, showing that even with strong economic ties, Canadians would rather keep their own identity than become America's northernmost state. In other words, we'll trade with you, but we're not moving in. The idea of merging with the U.S. isn't new, but it's also never been popular. In the 1970s, around 20% of Canadians were open to the idea, likely due to ongoing constitutional debates. By the 1990s, support had dropped to 15% as national identity grew stronger during the Quebec referendum. In 2017, during the NAFTA renegotiations, support hit 10%. Today, after Trump's latest remarks, it's down to just 9%. The trend is clear: the more Americans bring it up, the less interested Canadians seem to be. Not all parts of Canada feel the same way, but the consensus is pretty clear. Ontario, despite sharing the biggest border with the U.S., has 95% of its population opposing annexation. Quebec, unsurprisingly, rejects the idea by 92%, citing language rights and cultural identity as major reasons. Alberta, despite its energy trade ties with the U.S., still sees 88% of its people against the idea. Younger Canadians, especially those under 30, are even more opposed to U.S. integration than older generations. Apparently, they'd rather keep affordable college tuition and pouting than swap it for student debt and fast food chains on every corner. Now that Mark Carney is Canada's new Prime Minister, all eyes are on how his relationship with Trump will unfold. Will it be civil? Will it be chaotic? Will Trump remember Canada's Prime Minister's name this time? The details of their first meeting are still unknown, which has led to endless speculation. When asked about the lack of an official meeting, Ambassador Hillman responded with the diplomatic equivalent of a shrug, saying that leaders will engage when the right moment arises. Their differences are clear. Trump has historically pushed for protectionist tariffs, while Carney favors a market-driven, globalized trade system. Trump has championed energy independence, while Carney is a strong advocate for carbon pricing. When it comes to defense, Trump has been demanding increased NATO funding, whereas Carney supports modernizing NORAD without unnecessary theatrics. Carney's experience handling global finance might make him the perfect person to deal with Trump's unpredictability, if he has the patience for it. The U.S. and Canada have a long history of working together while also having some polite disagreements. From border disputes to trade agreements, it's been a constant push and pull. Several key moments in history highlight the debate over Canadian sovereignty. The 1842 Ashburton-Webster Treaty settled border disputes between the U.S. and Britain, keeping Canada intact. Later, in 1988, the Free Trade Agreement raised concerns about U.S. influence, though it ultimately strengthened economic ties between the two nations. NAFTA in 1994 and USGA in 2020 continued that balancing act: cooperation without losing independence. The two countries have collaborated on defense since the 1958 NORAD agreement, proving they can work together without merging. A 1957 NORAD declaration summed it up best: we defend the same skies but remain distinct nations. In other words, Canada is happy to work with the U.S. on security matters. Just don't expect them to start pledging allegiance to the stars and stripes. Experts believe that while diplomatic tensions may rise, the two nations will keep things professional. Ambassador Hillman recently emphasized that Canada remains committed to respectful dialogue despite disagreements. Looking ahead, Canada and the U.S. are expected to focus on joint energy projects that align economic goals while keeping environmental policies in check. Diplomatic meetings will continue, aimed at reaffirming sovereignty without unnecessary drama. Public diplomacy efforts may be strengthened to remind Americans that Canada isn't just America's attic. Several major factors will shape the relationship moving forward. U.S. election cycles will continue to shift policy priorities, making stability a challenge. Climate change initiatives will require both nations to find common ground. Border security modernization will be a topic of ongoing discussion, as both countries balance national safety with economic mobility. Even though annexation is still a topic that gets thrown around, experts agree that actual cooperation will likely happen in trade, technology, and defense, not in a redrawing of the map. The latest U.S. Canada exchange highlights just how firm Canadians are about their independence. Ambassador Hillman's response to Trump's 51st state comments was more than just a rebuttal. It was a reminder that Canada has no intention of changing its status. Canadians overwhelmingly support sovereignty, making this one of the few truly nonpartisan issues in the country. While trade agreements, defense partnerships, and border policies will continue evolving, Canada's independence remains untouchable. As North American politics shift, the U.S. and Canada will have to find ways to work together without crossing each other's red lines. One thing is certain, Canada will not be trading its toonies and Tim Hortons for greenbacks and Dunkin' Donuts anytime soon. Thanks for tuning into this analysis. If you found it valuable, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss our latest reports. See you in the next one.